I recently moved all the horses around for winter. As you can see, they had a few kinks to work out. Pretty much everybody was getting along except Skeletor and Stewie. As horses do, they spent a few hours figuring out who was going to be in charge of the new herd. Surprisingly, the smallest horse, Stewie, ended up looking like he was going to be in charge of everybody. Skeletor is the biggest horse out with this herd, and him and Stewie looked like they were going to be best friends. But when I came out the next day, I found Skeletor all alone, far, far away from everybody else. He came in when I fed everybody, but then I noticed after doing chores for about an hour, he was just standing at the gate.
What are you doing?
It looked like he was having a hard time convincing the other horses that he was allowed to be eating his breakfast too.
Go eat breakfast.
For anyone that's new to my channel, I got Skeletor from an auction and he was really emaciated. He's had a pretty healthy appetite the whole time that I've had him, so it's a little weird that he was standing by himself this morning. I was hoping that it was a fluke thing and he just wanted to say hello to me.
Skeletor.
But when I came to feed the next morning, it looked like he was out in the pasture all by himself again. I wandered out to see what exactly was going on. Sometimes when these horses are first introduced to a new herd, they can run around quite a bit. He started walking in as soon as he saw me, but it looked like he did have a little bit of injury. I made him trot and he looked like he was a little bit sore in his stifle, which could just be from him running around with the other horses. He did look fairly depressed though. He has always been the kind of horse that really feels sorry for himself when something's not going right. It has been getting colder here in Montana, so I want to make sure before real winter comes that if he's not comfortable in his herd, I can put him in a different spot. All the horses in this pasture get hay in the morning and at night, and then they also get fed a ration balancer in the morning to fill in any holes in their diet. Skeletor was a little bit afraid to come over to get fed, but he eventually figured it out. He does eat a lot slower than the other horses, so by the time the other horses were done with their breakfast, they came over to steal his and he just ran away. He didn't want to get into any fights. It looked like his stifle was still a little bit sore for him.
Oh, buddy.
I don't know if he was trying to make me feel extra sorry for him, but he was really milking that all the other horses were picking on him. He is not the only new horse in this herd. Mort was turned out with all these horses the same day, and he seems to be getting along fine. Skeletor kind of wandered around and he went and checked the rest of the feed bins to see if there were any leftovers for him. On his fourth day turned out with the new herd, he was out in the pasture all alone again when I came to feed in the morning. I fed the horses in the barn and then I came out to the pasture and he still hadn't come in yet, so I knew that something wasn't quite right. With it getting colder, I've noticed that the coyotes that usually hang around have gone somewhere, so I've been bringing my dog Huckleberry with me more. It is a little chilly and hunting season, so he likes to have his Carhartt on. Today, when I walked out to get Skeletor, he didn't even want to come in to see me. He just stood in one spot and waited for me to come out and get him. He looked really, really depressed this morning. Skeletor has been turned out with this herd before. He was turned out with them all spring and they seem to really get along. But in the summertime they have access to the pasture 24/7 most of the time, so he doesn't have to come in to get fed. I gave him a quick once over to see if he was hurt in any way, but it seemed like he was just feeling sorry for himself in general. When I went in for a closer look, it looks like he had been bitten on his neck. He had a bunch of slobber marks from where the other horses bit him on his butt. It didn't look like they took the hair off in any spots, but it looked like they really ran him around last night or this morning. I went around to feel his stifle because I know that he did pull it when I initially turned him out. He's got another bite over here. Because he was feeling sorry for himself and separate, I decided to check his teeth. This is what an adult tooth looks like, and then he does have another adult tooth coming in, and when they come in they push out the baby teeth that are on top of them. So this is a baby tooth, and then he also has another baby tooth that won't come out for probably another year. So for those of you that are asking, those set of incisors come out when they're about 3.5 years old, so this upcoming year he will be 4 years old. He was still really feeling sorry for himself, but he did end up following me into the pen. It seemed like he really did not want to go in. and it looks like it's about time for me to put the water heaters in all of their tanks for the winter. When we got into the dry lot, Skeletor just kind of stood there. He actually followed me around. He didn't want to be near any of the other horses. So I gave him a bunch of extra scratches and snuggles. I think it's important for horses to learn how to get along in a herd, but at this point, these guys are really running him around, and I might want to separate them before they do any serious damage. Stewie was really watching him like a hawk, and when I left Skeletor, Stewie went right over and started chomping on him. I could tell that Skeletor was trying really hard to be nice to Stewie. He didn't really want to play with him. You can see here coming up that Skeletor starts yawning, which is a sign that he's really stressed out. He tried to hold his ground against Stewie, who is much smaller than him. But when he didn't give up, Stewie went into playing more aggressively. He started biting at his legs, which is something that young horses do, but Skeletor really didn't want to play with him. I didn't want Skeletor to get anxious and run back out to the pasture, so I went ahead and I got these guys their breakfast for the morning, and after I fed them, they seemed to be doing better. When I came to feed the next morning, I was surprised to see that Skeletor was waiting for the other horses for their breakfast. He was kind of standing in a corner, but it was really nice to see that he was brave enough to come in on his own this morning. Even though little Gus is pretty low on the totem pole, he always likes to be the first one to get a bite of hay in the morning. As I was feeding everybody, I noticed that Stewie was still really staring down Skeletor. Because they were still being pretty mean to him, I decided I would give Skeletor his own little pile of hay today. I gave him one pile a little bit farther away from the other horses to see if he could get along with everybody. Huckleberry really wanted to play this morning, even though it was freezing out. Because it was pretty chilly, I wanted to make sure that Skeletor got a chance to really eat this morning. When it's cold out, a lot of the heat that horses use to stay warm comes from them digesting their forage.
Come on. Right here. Come on.
I'm happy that Skeletor looks like he's being a little bit more brave today, but I'm still going to keep an eye on him because as it gets colder, it'll be important for him to get as much as he wants to eat. I went ahead and fed all the other horses, including this tiny pony. He gets basically just the leaves that fall off of the hay because he can't chew real hay. I turned out Scarlett and then went out to the round pen to give her breakfast. I fed Goose and Whiplash. And then when I came back to check on the boys, it looked like Skeletor did end up going over to his separate hay pile that was pretty far away. With him having a little bit harder time keeping weight on than the other horses, if I need to bring him in and feed him separate, that's totally fine. It's been almost a week since I turned them all out together, and by now they should have figured out who was going to be in charge and they should all be settling down. The evening of day 6, we were having the most beautiful sunset. The moon looked so crazy right above the mountains. Pretty much the only benefit to it getting dark at like 5 p.m. in the winter is I get to see the sunset almost every day when I feed the horses. Unfortunately, it did look like little Gus and Stewie were still chasing poor Skeletor around. Skeletor looked like he had really given up. He wasn't interested in trying to fight them, and he was just standing by himself, looking pretty sad. They've been out together long enough that he should be at least comfortable being around the other horses, but he just seems super depressed to me. He has always been a happy-go-lucky kind of horse, even when he was pretty starved down, so to see him so sad really kind of breaks my heart. I don't like how depressed he's getting, and I feel like he's going to start losing weight if I leave him out with the herd any longer. It's looking like the best thing for him for winter would be to get his own private stall with a run in the barn. That way I can continue to feed him extra and I won't have to worry about him fighting for his food. I know this guy has a lot of fans out there and I am super excited to get him started under saddle. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned for the next video.